go straight into this, and at least I would hope that he could hear us. If not, I'm just recording it, and what I'll do is I'll send it over to him afterwards. That might work, because he's coming in and out of this call every 3 seconds. Hello, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to record this conversation, and hopefully it picks up okay. And then if anything if you miss out on anything, then it's going to be in the recording. I can send that to you. Sound okay? Yeah? No? Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna walk you through that document. So while this is recording, you guys can kind of follow along. But to sort of explain it piece by piece, the page 3, just check that the name is spelled correctly. I believe it is, but we can double check. You're finishing. When do you finish school? Or you already finished, didn't you?
I'm already finished. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
My name is spelled correctly. Yes.
So potentially we could try to do August of this year, but that's going to be very tight. Just the visa process alone would be difficult to push through. But I've even seen people start school in sort of October, November time, and just working online from sort of August forward until a visa arrives. So most schools will let that happen nowadays, especially after the pandemic. It became kind of a normal thing, while visas were delayed and that kind of stuff. Okay. So we'll work towards an August of 22, but you may end up arriving January of 23, that's fine too. Most rugby seasons in the USA actually start in what they call the spring semester, which is basically January moving forward, up to the summertime. Okay, so we're going ahead with that thought process. I've checked off in the target divisions. Have you got that up in front of you, guys? You've got the document up in front of you?
Yes, I've got it.
Perfect. Okay. So what I've checked off is the NCAA Division 1, 2, and the NAIA. Okay. Those are the 3 groups of schools that I think would be appropriate for you. Okay. In terms of the rugby side of things. Academically, I want to explain a few things, and there's a certain group of rules around eligibility based on your academics. Okay, so I converted your exam scores from school into the American equivalent, which is approximately a 2.4 GPA. That's where it says converted GPA. Okay. Ideally, NCAA schools, you have to get a 2.8 to be eligible to play in the NCAA schools on scholarship. However, adult male rugby in America in college is actually run by USA Rugby and something called the Ncaa, the National College Rugby. So in that case, they kind of bypass a lot of the eligibility rules. However, you will lose a lot of academic money by having a lower GPA. So I'll give you an example. I work at a university called St. Thomas University, and they have a rugby program. That school costs $46,000 per year. Okay, including your room and food and tuition and everything. Okay. But if you have a 3.5 GPA or above, bearing in mind a maximum is 4.0, so a 3.5 to a 4.0, they give you automatically $13,000 in academic scholarship money. Okay, so therefore 46,000 then goes down to 33, right? And then you can put, say I put $10,000 in scholarship money for the rugby side of things. That takes it down to 23, much more reasonable. Okay, so that's how schools tend to work. The coaches are given a budget, but they look at the academic ability first so that they can figure out how much academic scholarship money they can give you, and then they stack the athletic scholarship money on top to get you to a reasonable price. Okay, and the coaches and the admissions department can manipulate that back and forth a little bit. Now, NCAA schools, Division 1 and Division 2, they tend to be your bigger schools, big facilities. Rugby in those schools tends to be a smaller sport. Because obviously the big ones are American football, baseball, basketball, the typical American, big sports that you would expect to be priority, let's say. In the NAIA schools, a lot of them, rugby is a much more important sport. Life University is a good example. They actually had a rugby club, and they built the university around the rugby club. There was rugby there before the university existed. So that's as you can imagine, their main sport. They tend to be much smaller schools, NAIAs, and a little bit cheaper and a little bit easier to get into academically. So for example, with a 2.2 GPA, you should be able to qualify for most NAIA schools. Whereas the NCAA schools, you need a 2.8 minimum. Okay. So I'm thinking you should go to an NCAA D1, D2 potentially if they accept your GPA, and certainly an NAIA school would be possible. Okay. Junior college would be an option as well. They tend to be cheaper again. And you can do the first 2 years of a bachelor's degree at a junior college and then transfer to the NCAA later to get year 3 and 4. But just to show you the difference, NJCAA, which is your junior college, and the CCCAA, community college, those two institutions are 2-year schools where you get an associate's degree. Okay. The rest of them are all 4-year schools where you get more academic education, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and eventually a PhD if you continue. Okay. I put in there an SAT target. At this late stage, you may not have time to take an SAT, so that means you would have less school options. Purely because there's 4,000 universities, half of them are junior colleges. You don't need an SAT to go to junior college. And probably half of the 4-year schools right now don't expect you to have an SAT, purely because last year was a bit of a disaster, obviously, with the pandemic. A lot of people just physically couldn't go and take the SAT because the locations where you take them were all closed. So there is still a little bit of continuation with that, and schools are a bit more flexible, and not all of them are taking it. So if you do take the SAT, you're in good shape. If you don't have time, there'll be less options, but I feel like you'd still be okay. If you do manage to take one, 1,200 would be your target to open up the doors for the majority of the NCAA schools, and pretty much all of the NAIA schools would accept you with a 1,200 or more. The maximum score you can get in an SAT is 1,600. Okay, that's 1,600 points. Ivy League, which is the target division to the left, which I do not think you'd be able to go to clarify for you. You basically need minimum 1,400 points on the SAT for the Ivy League schools to even have a conversation with you. They are very difficult to get into. To give you an example, I've got a kid here in Florida that played rugby for me all through the high school age. Very intelligent kid. He got a 1570 on the SAT. And he applied for the top 20 schools in the USA and only got accepted by one of them. Carnegie Mellon is where he ended up going. So as you can imagine, it's very difficult to get into those schools, and you basically need to have 95, 96% on all of your exams throughout school. So yeah, it's kind of reserved for the elite academic kids that really just, they're very strong in school. You will not need to take a TOEFL exam because English is your first language, or in the eyes of the country, English is your first language, okay? The next section down is where we are predicting you would end up what you would end up paying, but this I think that's a little bit confusing. So I will go into it in the notes in a few seconds to give you the clear the clarity on what we expect you to end up paying at university if you should come here. Some of the things that are included in scholarships and what's not included in the process to go to university. On the left-hand side, what your scholarship includes, obviously the tuition. Say you end up paying $15,000 a year to attend a school that costs $45,000 a year. That means a big chunk, $30,000, is being scholarshiped for you. That includes tuition, on-campus housing, on-campus meals, books. Nowadays, they tend to give you a laptop. Any team fees and team travel tends to be paid for by the university itself, and it's kind of included in your final price. Any administration fees as well with the university tend to be included. On the way there, like in this process that we're going to go through, these are a few of the things that you'll probably have to pay for along the way. So the SAT exam I mentioned, that's about $150. It varies slightly from country to country and exchange rates, but you register to take that test. You register online, and it gives you the nearest location to wherever you are in the world. Okay, the NCAA clearinghouse. You would have to go through that. That's basically the university complying with the government to do like a background check on you to make sure they understand that you are the person that you say you are in all the documentation. Because as you can imagine, it's quite common for people to try to get into the country without the appropriate qualifications. Okay. So that's something you'd have to do as well. TOEFL, again, you will not have to do that. You don't have to do that TOEFL fee because you will not be taking the TOEFL exam. Academic transcript verification, pretty much everybody has to do this. They take the paperwork that you've got from high school or previous colleges, and they verify it, saying that this is a authorized governing body in your country that creates the examinations, and you've taken them and passed them. That just verifies it for the universities in America. Transcript translation only applies if your transcripts are obviously written in something other than English, so I think you won't have to do that. The visa is obviously your passport getting stamped. Once you've got all of your paperwork in order, you've received your scholarship offer letter and signed it and agreed to attend that university, then you would take all your paperwork and go to the embassy, your local American embassy in your country, and basically ask for that visa to be put into your passport. All the paperwork will be completed. You pay the $450, and then the American government does all the paperwork to get that finalized. Two other items would be the health insurance when you come to America. Medical and dental insurance is important. Hospitals are not free here. Okay, so it's important to have that insurance policy in place. If you get sick, you have the flu, whatever it might be, something more dramatic, or you've got surgery, insurance will cover it. If you don't have it, it's extremely expensive. As you can see on this video, I played rugby all my life and broke my nose a couple of years ago, and it cost $10,000 just to go get a scan and basic treatment at a hospital. My insurance policy kicked in, covered about 90% of it, so I ended up paying about $800 for that injury. Whereas if I didn't have the insurance policy, it would have been about $10,000. So the insurance policy, that's an average annual cost for a health insurance policy. With you being a foreigner coming in, they will ask you to pay it all at once right before you start using it. In this case, potentially August of this year or January next year. For a young person, $70 to $100 a month is normal. Someone like myself, I'm 43. I'd pay about $300, nearly $400 per month in health insurance. So it's quite expensive for an older person. Obviously, flights to get here are not covered by the universities, so you will have to get your flight from your country to the university where you end up going. $500 is very cheap, but that's if you're paying ahead of time, quite early. You can't book a flight until you've got your visa, and you can't get the visa until you've had the scholarship offer. So it's a chain of events that are going to get you to that. So the quicker we do things, the quicker, the earlier you can book your flight to get to that location, and obviously the cheaper the flights would be. All right. And any questions with all of that so far?
So far, no.
All good. Okay. So let's skip down to, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to interrupt. And I'm happy to clarify anything. On the next page, I've got a timeline for you. So this is, basically from now to August is where we're squeezing everything in. Keep in mind that these tasks that we've got on this timeline, normally we would spend 2 years completing these tasks. We're going to do 2 years of work in the next 4 months, basically. Okay. So we got our work cut out for us, but that's a rough timeline and a list of all the things that you would need to do in the coming months, and obviously we're helping you through all of that. The notes here, this is where it gets pretty specific, so I'll talk about that. I'll just read it out to you. Panashe has several options for college rugby in the USA. A GPA of 2.4 is a little low for most NCAA schools, like I mentioned earlier. They're basically looking for a 2.8 GPA. However, we will be able to get some very good NAIA and JUCO schools to give scholarships, bringing costs down. $30,000 to $60,000 is normal for NAIA and NCAA. So $30,000 to $60,000 is what they normally cost. We think they can come down to around 15 to 20 per year after scholarships, worst case scenario. So that's me being very conservative. I would like to think that it'll come down lower than 15, but there's a few. We're very late to the game. Most scholarships for August of 22 have already been given away about 6 months ago. So lots of college coaches don't have any scholarships left. So now you're fighting over the scraps a little bit. So that's why I feel like that the costs are going to be a little bit higher. But doesn't mean we can't find something, but it might just be a case of relying on a little bit of luck, maybe a kid dropping out at the last minute, which releases some scholarship money, and you may be able to snatch that up. I don't generally play like this and do things just based on luck. So what I'd like to do is, if we get started very quickly with the objective of trying to get here for August of this year, and something pops up and we can take advantage of it, we can do it. If not, at least we're in a good position to be at front of the line for potentially August 23 entrance with a much more significant scholarship. Because the college coaches, basically, they get their scholarship budget 1 year before someone like you would arrive. So as you can imagine, a coach now usually has got his team roster all wrapped up for the August of 22. He already knows, or she already knows, who's going to be arriving and who's going to be returning, because they've distributed those scholarship dollars. So when in August of 22, they get a new budget to start preparing for the people that are going to arrive in August of 23. So if we started our work now and nothing comes up for August 22 entrance, we would be in a very good position to get significant scholarships to arrive in August of 23, if that's something that you were willing or interested to do, and it may potentially give you more time to prepare yourselves, prepare in terms of getting everything in line, maybe even Panashe finding a job potentially in the meantime to help contribute to all of these potential costs. So that's my thought process. In terms of the divisions where I think you should be, D1A and D1AA rugby schools are what we would target in terms of the rugby ranking. I think you can play in those divisions no problem. They're the top two divisions in the USA, outside of Major League Rugby, which is a professional league. You will get a few offers from Division 2 and the Ncaa schools as well. but we'd want to weigh up the options based on academics, location, professional opportunities, post-school, and a few other variables. Okay. So with that in mind, what I feel would be most appropriate is aiming for a D1A school where you're going to be playing at a good level. The facilities would be amazing. You're going to be in a very serious professional environment, and most of those schools are the ones that are preparing guys and girls to be playing in the professional leagues and playing in the USA national team eventually. So I wouldn't doubt that we can find some professional opportunities when you graduate. And legally, you would be allowed to do that once you've completed university in this country, because that should take 4 years. By the end of those 4 years, you'd be qualified to stay for an additional year on a work contract that can be related to your studies, or if you draft from university into the professional leagues, they do accept foreign players on something called an OPT, which is a visa extension. So I think you'd be definitely someone that should be putting their name in the hat for potential professional contracts at the end of college. So thoughts, Panashe, what are your thoughts on all of that, and any questions that you might have?
I'm now more informed about the whole document basically, and I'm just looking through right now just to see if there's anything that I don't know. Is there any way? Is there any way I can improve my GPA? Or that's like
no. You won't be able to improve your GPA. The GPA is taken over 4 years. So unless, I mean, I obviously just took what you gave me, but presumably that's what it was, right? You finished school and you got the scores that you got. Even if you went and, I don't know, you resat all of your exams. Say you did all of your exams and you got to you did them all and you got 90%, because now you're more mature and you've decided that you're going to figure it out. Even if you got 90% in all of your exams tomorrow, that would only take your GPA from a 2.4 to the average between 2.4 and a 90%. So 90% would be, let's say, like a 3.5, right? Not even, maybe a 3.8. So it would be the average between the 2.4 and the 3.6. So it might go up a couple of points, maybe, because you've got all of those 4 years prior that have basically held you back and pulled down the score. But honestly, the easier pathway for you would be to go and take an SAT exam and do really well on that one exam. Because if you get a very good score on that, then you can sort of say, well, I had a GPA that was poor, but I've got now a very strong SAT score, which offsets it a little bit, because they're separate things. But at least with a very strong SAT score, you're demonstrating that you've got a higher level of education and you can handle university level education.
okay. All right.
Okay. So yeah, I don't recall. What was your annual budget that you put into the assessment form? I don't recall off the top of my head.
I think it was 10,000, if I'm
Okay.
not mistaken.
Okay. So with you already, if you already have that, this is how it works. When you arrive at university, okay, you get you normally have to pay 50% of the annual cost of the university. So say it costs 15,000. When you arrive, you'd have to pay 7.5, right? 50% of 15. In January, for example, your second semester, then you would pay the other 7.5. So what a lot of people do is, when they come here as a student on a university visa, a student visa, you can work in the university up to 20 hours per week. To give you an idea, average, like very average, like usually somewhere between $10 and $15 per hour is what you would get. So say worst case scenario, you got a job on campus at $10 per hour and you do 20 hours a week. It's usually like being the receptionist at the gym or organizing the books in the library, that kind of stuff. They're not very difficult jobs, and quite often most kids end up sitting and studying while they're doing those jobs. But say you're getting $10 an hour, that's $200 a week. Over a month, that's $800 a month. So as you can imagine, if you do that August, September, October, November, December, that's 5 months. Right there, you've already got $4,500. So, you know what I mean? You've got money in your pocket at that point. You can either put it towards your tuition fees, or you put it in your pocket, and that's your play money. Whatever you want to do, you can do. But your maximum is legally 20 hours per week, but it has to be a job on campus. So unofficially, there are a lot of it's America. There's a lot of other opportunities for work if you really wanted it. But again, legally, you're not supposed to be doing that. But just to be very clear with you, the unemployment rate in America is about 3%. Pretty much everybody works. There's no reason not to have a job in this country. Okay. So yeah, in terms of your finances and what you have to figure out, that's something to think about. The other thing obviously is our services. So I'm going to put this into the group chat. So we've got obviously our fees that we charge for the work that we're going to do, connecting you with all of these schools and the colleges and figuring out all your paperwork. Basically, if you do in my opinion, I think you should be doing the club package. I'm going to send that into the group chat right now. If you do the club package with us, I just sent it over, so you're receiving that link now. But the club plan gets you your highlight video. I would throw you in at the deep end and maybe just say, go take an SAT exam just to see what score you get. And you don't really need the classes with us, in my opinion, but you get everything else you need. What I'm willing to do to add to the club program, and I want you to make note of this to talk to your dad about, is I think you can play professional rugby here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, if you look at where it says support and management, that section, the club plan does not have it. It doesn't have the support and management. What I would like to do, a big part of that support and management is me as an agent helping you get into professional teams. I will add that I'll add the 4-year support and management into the club program, because I think in 4 years from now, you'll be able to play professional rugby here, and I want to be your agent. Okay? So instead of paying $5,197 and $2,000 when we've completed the job, it's basically I'm adding something in, and it's giving you $1,000 discount. So it'd be $4,197, $2,000 when we've completed the job of getting you into university, but I'm adding in 4 years of support while you're in university to get you in front of all of these these professional team coaches for when you graduate. And then we can see about getting you a pro contract in the USA afterwards. Okay? So that is pretty much everything. Take a look through all the services. Make sure you understand each detail of that. And then from there we can see what's possible and what you want to do. You can add in and take things out of there if you wish. It's just a case of choosing what you need and what you think you want, and then we can play with the cost, the expense of that a little bit. If there's certain things you don't need, we can take it out and reduce the price a little bit. Okay. All right, mate. Any other questions? Anything else that you think you or your dad would like to know more about?
At the moment, no.
Okay. All right, mate. Well, I'll if your dad would like to get on a call with me later on, I'm available all day. I've got a fair few meetings, but if he messages me and he finds that he's got a better signal, I'll be happy to go through everything with him. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this video. I've recorded the whole thing. I'm gonna put that onto a YouTube link, right? And it's just my personal YouTube channel. But I'll send the link to you guys so that you can just watch this whole conversation and and afterwards I'll delete it off of my personal link, rather than sending you a 30-minute video that's going to clog up the memory on your phone.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, mate. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. Speak to you soon.